This interview is part of the History Heard project. The content of this interview may be used for historical research. However, no part of the video itself may be reproduced without the express written permission of an authorized representative of History Heard. Today is June 24th, 2009 at 11 a.m. This is an interview with Len Downie in Washington, D.C. He was born on May 1st, 1942 in Cleveland, Ohio. Today, print media is on the decline. Some print media, because as it's going online and people are reading newspapers, but do you think that what are the good things about that and the bad things?
There's an earthquake has taken place in the American news media. For the whole last half of the 20th century, we went through an anomalous period, unmatched in history before and will not be in the future, in which a relatively few newspapers, television networks, and television stations across the country had a monopoly, essentially, on news coverage and advertising before the internet came along and before cable television came along, it became a big factor. And as a result, they made huge amounts of money from advertising. 20% profits, 30% profits for newspapers, 50% profits for television stations. So they had plenty of money to spend on the news. So essentially, the news coverage was subsidized by all this advertising. We and other newspapers were able to grow unusually large news staffs, larger than ever been before, and do all kinds of free journalism. And that has now come to an end. It's not for lack of an audience, because whether people read newspapers or not is not that important, because they read what newspapers produce online or in print. So that doesn't matter. But what does matter is the advertising revenue loss, particularly the classified advertising that many newspapers, like the Washington Post, accounted for 40% or so of our revenue. And a lot of that has gone to the internet. It's easier to search on the internet, it's free on the internet, and then along came this huge recession, which has further depressed advertising. And as a result, there have been huge revenue losses at newspapers, 30–40% losses of their revenue. And so they've had to cut back. They've had to cut back on their news staffs by 25–30–50% in many cases. They've had to cut back on the size of the newspapers. The pages are smaller. There are fewer pages. There's less news in newspapers. And they're trying to figure out how to make money online, because the problem there, of course, is nobody subscribes online to a newspaper, with a few exceptions like the Wall Street Journal. And so there's a big question about how we're going to pay for news in the future. The good parts of it is that more news is available to more people than ever before. So, for instance, when you could only read the Washington Post 15 years ago in the Washington region, because we didn't publish nationally, you now can read the Washington Post anywhere in the world. That's great. Yeah. Or if you're living here, you can read China Daily. You can read the Times of London. You read anything. So more news is available to more people than ever before. The problem is that if we don't figure out a new economic model for the production of news, it won't matter you can read all these websites, because there won't be much news on them. And so that's what we're trying to figure out. There are no easy answers to this. And in fact, I'm currently working on a project for Columbia University, where I'm going to present them a report in October on this very issue I'm discussing. And I need to make some recommendations about ways in which we can try to change this economic model.
Yeah, definitely. And our last question is, if you were interviewing yourself with the knowledge that you had, what would you ask?
What would I ask? I guess I would ask, why is news important? Because there are people who don't necessarily think that professional news reporting is important, because when the metro train crashed here in Washington the other day.
Why is news important?
Yes. So the crash of the metro subway train here in Washington that killed 9 people and injured dozens of people a couple days ago is a good example, because initially people were able to send in iPhone pictures of what was going on. People could call in or write on blogs or send information into our website about what they experienced. And so there's some people out there who say, well, that's enough news coverage. We don't have to have professional news reporters. But in fact, most of what we know so far about the crash has not come from them. That was helpful, what we got from them initially, what the public got from them. But the most important information, who was it that died? What are their biographies? Why did this accident happen? What's going to be done about it? Is there some larger problem with the metro system? And all that kind of information. Can I ride the train tomorrow? Has the schedule changed as a result? All of that has to come from professional news gathering. And if we don't have that, it's going to be more difficult for people to live their lives.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
You're welcome.